All right, guys, we are going to talk about pain, divorce, separation, and pain. This is my first time here on a live call on YouTube, so I don't know how many folks are going to come, if any. We're going to talk about this, though, and thank you for bearing with me if we have any little technical glitches. So, guys, one of the things that I hear and I see a lot, both amongst my coaching clients and you guys here on YouTube, is that you feel overwhelmed during the process of separation or divorce. Overwhelm is a sign of pain. Overwhelm is a nervous system reaction to pain. And it's something that is really, really important to pay attention to because it is a sign that we need better tools, better resources, and more support in order to handle what we're going through. And that might sound kind of obvious. Like, yes, if I'm overwhelmed, I need better tools or more help. But I want to say it really explicitly because I think a lot of men, especially who are going through separation or divorce, are in this mindset of I have to power through, I have to handle this, I have to hold things together, I have to manage it for my kids, I have to, I can't show the weakness, I can't fall apart, I can't afford to. And it's really, really important to recognize that overwhelm because a lot of us just try to power through it. And it just doesn't work when it comes to the pain of separation or divorce. So in this live stream today, what we're going to do is a couple of things. I'm going to give you some real concrete tools for dealing with pain, with emotional pain. And I'm also going to talk about why it's so important to do this, why it's important to not push through, power through feelings of overwhelm or emotional pain, because to actually deal with that pain effectively is going to require you to sit with it a little bit. And that's hard. It's really hard. In fact, if you start looking at yourself, at your life, I think you'll see a lot of ways that you go to pretty extreme lengths to avoid pain. Right? Most of us drink too much, eat too much, binge out on YouTube videos or Netflix. Right? We do a lot of things to avoid our feelings. But if we're going to move through pain and if we're going to take overwhelming, unmanageable, or intolerable pain and make it manageable, we're going to have to sit with it. Not for a long time, but for a little time. And that is really hard to do. Your brain's not going to want to do it unless it really believes that it's going to help. So that's why we're going to talk about why this matters, why it can make a difference, because otherwise your brain's just not going to let you do the exercises I'm going to ask you to do. So guys, I see we have some people joining. Please drop me a note in the chat. Let me know where you're joining from. And more than anything, let me know what you would like to hear, what you want to take away from this call, what is most important for you. Because I really want to, there's a lot of different ways we can go. I want to adjust this and make it work for you. Okay, so let's talk about overwhelming pain and why we need to deal with it. You might think that you've got it together, that you're handling things. I recently had a comment here on YouTube from a fellow who said, I'm taking care of it. I've got 2 young kids. I'm taking care of them. I'm going to work. I'm dealing day by day, but I've stopped planning for the future. And I've stopped thinking about what's next. And he's like, it seems a little messed up. How am I not thinking about the future, especially for my boys? This guy is in overwhelm. Right? He's experiencing pain, incredible pain, the loss of a primary relationship in his life. And his nervous system is reacting to that. He feels like he's got it together. And in a lot of ways he does, right? He's taking care of his kids. He's going to work. He's providing. He's loving them. He's handling things day to day. But he can't see the future anymore. And when that happens, that's a sign that the nervous system has gone into the beginnings of a freeze state. And so this is really important. The relationship between emotions and nervous system states. I think most of us don't separate those two out, and we should. We have an emotion. Let's say it's grief. Let's say it's loss or hurt or anger. And then our nervous system responds to that emotion. And often what happens when we have a painful emotion, something like grief or loss, the nervous system responds by going into fight or flight. It's like, oh no, this isn't good. I can't feel like this. It's too much. It's too much hurt. It's too much pain. So we go into fight or flight. We get anxious or we get angry. If we stay there and we can't recover, we can't solve the problem, the emotional pain doesn't go away, it stays too long, eventually the nervous system will start to go into freeze. That's when we feel depressed. That's when we stop planning for the future. That's when we don't really want to get out of bed, or we feel unmotivated, or it's just hard to get moving. Right? That's not an emotion. That's a nervous system reaction to an overwhelming or painful, intolerable emotion. Okay, so why am I just like harping on nervous system reactions? You guys, this stuff is really important, especially for men going through separation or divorce, because emotions that are overwhelming or intolerable, emotions that put your nervous system into fight or flight constantly or push you up into a freeze state, are dangerous. They are dangerous because they put you at an increased risk for suicide. This is a hard topic. It might be a triggering topic for some of you, but it's something we have got to talk about. I talk to a lot of men going through separation or divorce. The vast majority of them admit to me that at some point they had suicidal thoughts. Some of them have them actively. And the ones that don't admit it, I think a lot of them are still having them. The suicide rates for divorced men are 9 times that of the suicide rate for the general public. Okay? And that is a direct result of experiencing emotions that are intolerable, unmanageable, and overwhelming, because the brain doesn't see any other way to escape the pain besides death. That's extreme, and it is happening all of the time. And that is why it is so critical that we find ways to deal effectively with painful emotions and make them manageable. So most of the men I talk to are incredibly smart, logical, rational, reasonable. That might be one of their main complaints about their ex or their wife, is that she's too emotional. And she needs to be logical, she needs to be rational. Well, I want to talk to you about the logical way to manage emotions, because being in a fight or flight state or a freeze state is not sustainable. It can be fatal, right? If you stay there for too long, that is what leads people to suicide. And it's why the divorce or the suicide rates are so high for divorced men. So if we're going to be logical and rational, I hope what you're seeing as I'm sharing these statistics is that it's really essential to deal with these emotions, right? It is probably the one most important thing you can do for yourself and for your kids, if you have them, when you're going through a separation or divorce. Okay, so I'm hoping your brain sees that it is actually a question of life or death to manage emotional pain. Let's talk about how you do it. So emotional pain is not different from physical pain. It happens in the body. The physiologic processes behind the feelings are actually the same as when you feel physical pain, when you feel injured, when you feel hungry, when you feel tired. Any physical sensation is the result of the release of peptides, neurotransmitters, and hormones throughout your body. And when those hormones, neurotransmitters, and peptides flood your system, you feel things. And those feelings are giving you a message, right? They're saying, hey, you need to eat. Or, hey, you just got a big cut on your hand and you need to take care of that. Right? Those sensations physically give us information that we then act on that help us stay alive and stay healthy. Emotions are the same. Anytime you feel something, whether it's anger or anxiety or fear or hope or excitement, you're experiencing the release of peptides, neurotransmitters, hormones, all of these different chemicals throughout your body. And then you feel the sensation and it motivates you to take action. So just like when I feel hungry, I go to eat something. If I feel angry, I might fight back to defend myself. If I feel excited, I might go out and make something happen in my business, in my relationship. Right? So emotions are just another set of physical sensations that give us information. And this is really important because if you want to make emotional pain manageable, you can build on your knowledge that you already have of how to make physical pain manageable, and the same things will work. So I imagine at some point in your life, you've probably been hungry and not been able to eat right then, right? At another time in your life, you might have been injured, right? Have you smashed your thumb with a hammer? Have you had surgery? Have you broken a bone? Right? There's a lot of moments in our lives for all of us where we're going to be in physical discomfort or outright physical pain, and we're not going to be able to do anything about it. But usually we don't go into fight or flight, right? Our nervous system doesn't panic because we understand the source of the pain. We know that we've done what's necessary to manage it, right? On our broken leg, and we know roughly how long it's going to take for it to heal, and we're expecting it to hurt in the meantime. All of that understanding that we have allows us to accept the experience of pain. All right, I have a compound fracture in my femur. It sucks. It hurts. I wish it didn't, but it's going to, and I'm going to have to feel that. Right? It's going to be part of this process of healing. Another example I like to give is food poisoning. Right? It's horrible. It's a set of some of the worst physical sensations that you might experience. And yet you don't panic usually. You don't go into fight or flight. You don't get into that overwhelmed freeze state because you know what it is. You know you're not going to die, and you know it's going to go away, and you know you have to get through it. So emotional pain is actually no different. It happens in the body. It does not last forever. If you think about the emotions you've had in your life, have you ever had an emotion that didn't go away? Eventually it changes. Emotions are physical sensations in our body, and we can work with them physically, just like we can work with other sources of pain. So there's another element at play here that will help you when you're working with physical or with emotional pain. And that's to understand which parts of your brain are actually connected to the nervous system. So when we're working with intolerable, unmanageable, or overwhelming pain, what we're trying to do is not stop the pain, right? That would be like saying, okay, I'm going to just stop the pain of my broken leg. But that's not my goal. My goal is to make it more manageable, make it more tolerable, less overwhelming, so that I can feel the loss, I can feel the hurt, and I can still function, right? I can still go about my day. I can still feel good, right? I can move from that emotion into other emotions. So what our goal is to actually calm the nervous system. And when we do that, the emotions become manageable and tolerable. And we also regain our freedom to choose. How do we respond? Right? When the nervous system is activated into fight or flight or a freeze state, and we have a strong emotion, we don't have much choice. In that moment, we're going to react out of that anger, out of that hurt, out of that anxiety, and we might do or say things that we regret later, or that we didn't really want to do in the first place. The emotions kind of hijack us. When you can calm the nervous system, you regain access to your full prefrontal cortex, to all of your logic and reasoning and rationale. That pain might still be there, but you're present as well. It's not hijacking you. It's not taking over your life. You can still think clearly. You can make good decisions. You can see the future. You have a rounded, balanced memory of the past. That's where we want to get to with the difficult emotions that come up during a divorce. So it's not so much about stopping the emotion or controlling the emotion as it is about regulating the nervous system. Now, I think it might be worth just touching on why the emotions around divorce are so strong. Might seem kind of obvious, right? You were with this person for a long time. You had planned to spend a whole life with them. Of course, it hurts when they leave. But there's a couple of things going on here that actually make the emotions that you experience during divorce even more intense, and that actually trigger a stronger nervous system reaction than other circumstances in your life. So one of them is that for human beings, we evolved to co-regulate and to live and exist in groups. We're not very good at surviving on our own. Right? We need other people. We don't have fangs, we don't have claws, we don't have fur. The only things that really have kept us alive for so long are our prefrontal cortexes, and our ability to problem solve, and other people, right? Our relationships. So when we lose a relationship, especially a primary relationship like a spouse, that is on a physiologic level and a nervous system level, a huge loss for a human being. It is incredibly painful on the scale of life and death. And part of that is because for much of human history, losing your primary relationships was a question of life or death. Right? If you were left alone out in the world before modern society, you probably weren't going to make it very long. And so that nervous system reaction that fight or flight response, that panic response to the loss of a primary relationship is really deeply ingrained in our physiology. And so that magnifies the pain of the loss, our experience of that loss, when we're going through something like a separation or a divorce. And so knowing this is important because you can recognize that nervous system reaction in yourself and understand where it's coming from. Yes, I'm going through a serious loss right now. Yes, this is hard. And it feels even more intense, even more intolerable because my ancestors would have died without this relationship. And we can start to recognize that I'm not in that position, right? I am safe physically here and now. I'm not going to be eaten by a lion or freeze to death because this relationship was severed. Seems like a simple thing. Maybe it seems like a silly thing. That little piece of awareness will start to calm the nervous system. Okay, so let's talk about some concrete skills here, guys, for managing emotional pain and rendering it more tolerable. To calm the nervous system, we have to communicate with the nervous system. And these primal reactions, things like fight or flight or freeze states that we don't choose, they're not under the conscious control of the conscious part of our mind. They're subconscious. They're happening without our intention, without our approval. Most of those responses are rooted in the limbic system, which is right there deep in your brain at the brainstem. Some people call it the lizard brain because it's a part of our brain that we share a lot of with lizards. So the limbic system is where the fight or flight response originates. And when you have a strong emotion and you start to feel that overwhelm, that panic, that I can't take this, I can't handle it, it shouldn't be like this, that's a sign that the limbic system has activated and your nervous system is activating. So here's something to know about the limbic system. The part of your brain that problem solves, that does logic and reasoning and thinking and figuring things out, that part of your conscious mind has no neural connections to the limbic system. If you think about this, you'll recognize it in your own life. You can rationally know that something's going to be okay and still feel just absolutely destroyed about it. And I had another comment, I think just today here on YouTube, somebody saying, one of the biggest challenges I'm facing right now is this fear that I'm never going to find another woman who loves me. And in the very next sentence, he said, I know I will. Logically, I know that I will. And yet that fear of ending up alone is really, really strong. And there's that disconnect. My logical brain knows that I'm going to be okay, that I'm going to have loving relationships. Something in my body doesn't know. My nervous system doesn't know. It's panicked. It's afraid. That's the limbic system. And there's just no communication happening between those parts of your brain. So if we want to calm the nervous system, if we want to calm that fear of the future and help you feel better, we need to activate a part of the brain that actually can communicate with the limbic system. And fortunately, we have access to a conscious